Hello, friends, and welcome back to this week's episode of Thank You Come Again. Today, I am joined by Ben Zettler, a digital marketing and e-commerce consultant and the founder of Ben Zettler Digital. Ben, thanks for joining the show, man. How are you?
I'm doing really great. I appreciate you having me on. I'm excited to be here and kind of dive into things.
Yeah, super stoked to have you and to have you as one of our early guests. Thank you, come again. So we're building the ship while flying in here, so to speak. So we'll kind of take it as we go. But today's episode is all about content creation and the importance of really building, I think, a winning retention marketing strategy. Super stoked to get into that. But before we get into that, can you just share with our listeners who is Ben Zettler? What are you up to? What's your background kind of like in this space?
Yeah, 100%. That's a question I get all the time, especially as I'm, thinking about pitching clients and how we work with folks. And I've had a really interesting journey, and one that I think really benefits what I and we offer as a service. Having been on the other side of the fence from an e-commerce operations perspective of working for a large scale brand, also building my own company, in first having a background in running social media for a company called Steiner Sports for a long time, and eventually my role kind of growing there into overseeing other aspects of the e-commerce business. Also founding a sunglasses company that was store number 41,000 or so on Shopify. Not the earliest of adopters there to the platform, but very much before Shopify's rapid growth phase over the last 5, 6, 7 years. And what that's really done is help to inform a lot of what we do today, which is building websites and running email and text marketing on Klaviyo and running ads management for the clients that we work with. And again, trying to give merchants that we work with that unique perspective. Okay, I understand like all the different factors that come into like producing that product or selling that product and the costs involved and like the whole process. But I'm already ranting too far, further than I should be. But the high level summary of like what we do is, we're a digital marketing agency that builds websites for folks that helps them make more money online, and we have a lot of fun doing it.
Love it. And I think, first of all, I think your background speaks volumes, I think, to the expertise that you bring, to the clients that you work with. I think it's so impactful to have a brand experience and to be able to kind of like be that sort of like a player coach, if you will. You're kind of, you're able to understand both sides of it. So I that's kind of, my background as well, starting in the brand side and then coming over to, the agency life for a little while, and tech now. But I think it's also great to have that well-rounded background. And I know that you have a lot of, great insight about content and retention. That's what this episode is, really focused on. And during our pre-interview, Ben, you talked a lot about the power of content and, some of your own experience, on the brand side, has really, I'm sure, lended yourself to how you think about this. But I think one of the things that we were talking about was how content can really sell without selling. And when it's delivered over email channels like email, SMS, social, it can be so more impactful. And the other side of this is that retention channels over the last few years have sort of become like echo chambers, if you will, for recycled sales promos and just uninspiring content. I definitely have seen this myself, as I've watched more and more brands double down on email and SMS. Can you just talk to me a little bit about the importance of content? I know it's a pretty wide kind of thing here, but just any broad strokes there and how it can really help to build customer engagement.
Yeah, 100%. It's going to be different for every business, but it's core essentially to everything that you do as a brand, as a company, as trying to ultimately sell something online. I mean, that's at the end of the day, at least in my world, in our world, that's what everybody's essentially doing here. I can think of a couple of really great examples of, folks that I've either worked for that, that do a really good job of just not being the, hey, here, get this 20% off. Hey, here, get this. It's new. There's only 100, and it's 20% off. And then, hey, here we were running a 40% off sale, and then, hey, now we're running a 60% off sale. You don't want to be that because you're not, in theory, adding much value to the customer experience. You're not adding much value to you as a company. You're just really like undercutting your own margins and losing money. So yeah, content is. I hate using like buzzwordy phrases, but content truly is king. And what I mean by that is, Just one example, ProMix Nutrition, which is a client of mine. They're also a user of Wonderment, so a quick plug there. But ProMix is a brand that does a really great job of engaging with users on social media in the fitness, sports, sort of lifestyle type of community without, just jamming it down people's throats that, here we are selling these products and releasing these new products and, putting sales on these products. In fact, they ran, aside from last Black Friday, which was their first sale ever, they ran a special sale to celebrate the birthday of one of their founders over the summer, and that's it. But the more important point being that for them, it's all about the content that they're putting on social from a network of influencers and ambassadors that they've built, workout tips and recipe tips and things that have to do with the products that they're selling, certainly. And that's part of where the selling of the product comes in of, if you want like a protein, like chocolate protein balls that are taking protein powder and that's part of the recipe for creating that really delicious nutritious snack. Yeah, sure, they're selling there, but it's adding this extra layer of value to the customer experience that is going to be a whole lot more effective in the long run, and we've seen it, than just batch and blast. Hey, here we have this new product. Hey, here's this sale. Another good example, thinking back to my time at my previous job before I made the jump and made the full-time leap into agency life. But so I mentioned I worked for a company called Steiner Sports. Steiner was the largest autographed sports memorabilia company of its kind up until 3 years ago. They were around for about 30 years, but 3 years ago, Fanatics bought the company. But at Steiner, what we tried to do was break away from what had been that, that batch and blast. Here we have this product and it's X price, which, in the sport, and I'm holding a baseball as we're just by chance as we're recording this, but some of the product of the industry, sports memorabilia, and what you're selling is that element of, the hot market, the player that's doing really well, and here's this product at this price, and you're not going to get this elsewhere. That buying and selling, trading aspect, that sure, maybe some of that price sensitivity stuff comes into play more so than other brands, but we still tried to break away from that as best as possible over the course of my time there. And so in the social content that we were putting out, we put a heavy focus on, what is the thing that could add to the experience of a sports fan, even though, we weren't the team account or the player account or the thing that is most closely tied to that sport or team or player they love. And so that became things like interviews with players that we were doing signings with, and other like fun pieces of content that we would create like with the players in our office, or even just like Instagram polls, like when that stuff came out for the first time, and like, who do you think's going to win tonight? What's your favorite XYZ player of this era? Like, there's so much that you can work off of, at least in the sports world. Because there's thousands of players and hundreds of teams and different eras, and just so much that you can do without having to talk about the product itself. And we really thrived off that, because then when you have that content focus, when there are the times where, you are running a sale, or there is something that is a unique product, or something that you have in limited quantities, or something that is worthwhile shouting from the mountaintops about, then the messaging it can be that much more effective, because it's not falling on deaf ears anymore. People aren't so used to just hearing the same cadence of messaging over and over and over. Now those are just two examples, but really it's my belief that type of thing can be applicable across really any type of business and over different mediums. Like the ones I used were kind of specifically with a focus on social, but you can do the same for email marketing. You can do the same for text marketing. You can do, you can build communities of users in different ways, and generate interest from individuals in different ways. And it's really something that every brand needs to do in order to have some level of success. And as we're recording this 2022, but and down into the future for sure.
No doubt. I think So many good things to unpack there. And I think one of the things I'm hearing too is that content is a way to kind of bridge the gap. And when you're thinking about consideration of purchase, you need some of those things. Maybe you're on the fence, or maybe you just want to engage a little bit more and kind of learn about the brand. Like, content can be a great way to kind of be able to just increase engagement. I think across email, SMS, social, all those things you mentioned. But one of the questions I have for you is, so thinking about the mediums in which we disseminate content. So is it
Mhm.
blog posts? Is it videos? Is it some of the social stuff? Is it all of the above? Like someone thinking about a content strategy, is it as simple as just putting a blog post on a site and sending it to people over email? Like what would you think is some of the most effective ways to make sure content is consumed from a consumer standpoint?
It's a great question, and there isn't really one answer. When I first started at Steiner, for example, that was 2014. So this was kind of like before working with creators or influencers, or that wasn't a thing. Like it wasn't, or it was at least a thing. It's always been a thing. I mean, you've always had endorsements with people, but it wasn't really a known quantity. It wasn't like the common thing for most brands that are trying to sell something online were doing. Um, so it's going to be different for everyone, and I'd say now there's more emphasis put on it for a lot of brands than there was. It's hard to believe that it's almost 9 years ago. Um, where you're getting more folks that are working at a company that are specifically managing social media, or they're managing CRM, or they are the content strategist on the team, or they are the ambassador liaison. Like there's a lot more of a focus for a lot of companies on that, which is a good thing. But it's not necessarily a focus for everyone, or in a lot of cases, it's just a lot of work that's ultimately passed off to a junior level employee, which doesn't necessarily it doesn't necessarily put the right emphasis on it for that company. But for anybody that might be listening, that maybe they are in that boat, maybe they are that sort of like, maybe it's not the right term to use, like junior level, but like that couple years out of school type of hire, where you're expected to sort of do everything and then not be paid enough for it. There's a lot of opportunity there, as long as the brand that you're working for is relatively flexible, to try a lot of different things. I mean, because to go back to your example, like, yeah, maybe it is a once a week blog post, or maybe it's totally not. I mean, maybe you put something out there and it really starts to resonate with the audience. Like, you write a blog post and it's maybe it's a food-based business. So like recipes are going to be super, super relevant. And that's something where I would put a heavy emphasis on blogs that people are putting out there. And then how are you amplifying the reach of that content across different mediums? Like, okay, your most engaged users on email, they might want to see that recipe from that might include a product that they've purchased before, or putting out a social post that includes a video of how to make that recipe, or a preview of what's contained within the blog, or even putting paid marketing behind it. And that might be something that works great, and then you build a consistent flow, and it's something that's done every week or twice a week or 10 times a month, whatever it is. Or it might be something that completely flops, and that might not be the way. It might not be that blog, but it might be unique ways to use SMS, which I don't see a lot of brands doing, which a lot of it is the batch and blast type of stuff. But maybe it's just really trying to actually create a conversation without again, I hate using the buzzwordy type things, but without using buzzwords, what I mean is literally create conversations with users over SMS. So like, all right, you have 5,000 people in your list. Okay, send them something that says, "Hey, how are you doing today?" And like, see what happens, and see what types of responses you get, and have conversations with people. And we had somebody at Steiner that actually did that for like an older text marketing platform that we were on, where people would then all the time text that number and say, I'll give my friend Mike a shout out. So, hey Mike, I'm looking for XYZ, can you help? And that's exactly what we were doing that for. So that when someone did have a need, that they could reach out, and then they could whether they knew they were talking to someone like as a person or not, or if there's 10 different people that are answering those text messages, whatever it is, they feel that they can reach someone directly and they have that little extra relationship with the brand that they're working with. And it's great.
Sure. And I think, that's a good point too on the, the conversational side of SMS, and like content could be a great segue into starting conversations. Sweatshirt I'm wearing here is a point tone. We was a
Yep.
business I was at for a while. We made a whole business off of conversational SMS and putting a lot of content in the conversations that we were having. If it was linking out to things, if people were asking about sizing, or, like if it was the right product for the need or use case that they were looking for. Like there's a lot of things that like content can actually just start organic conversations. And that was one of the questions I wanted to ask you too, was like, I know a lot of people view email and SMS as like revenue based channels. And when we talk about content, a lot of times it's a long tail effect of like maybe that content, email or SMS, isn't going to drive the 10, 15, $20,000, flashy numbers that we see, but like the click-through rates are there. And some of those kind of behaviors that we know are going to generate, more long-term, I think, engagement and overall just, retention. So my question to you is like, is it like the goal of content to drive revenue in the short term, or should we be thinking more long-term with how we view content on these channels?
Generally, I would say long term, but that's not to say that like something like sort of short term can work. Like it, again, if to go back to it, if you have that relationship already, if that is something that has been built over the long term, then you can take advantage of those opportunities where there is something where you can hit a group of users with some sales focused messaging and it not be something that people just dismiss or people just delete. So yeah, I mean, it is very much a long-term thing. I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, what do you want to do as a brand? You want to sell, and you want to sell to the same people again and again and again. The only way to do that is to create people, to create real brand evangelists. People that like the products that you're selling. Do you have a product that, in theory, is replenishable, or do you have different product offerings that you can cross sell with, if it's clothing, for example, if it's jewelry, if it's things like that. But yeah, I mean, the long-term goal at the end of the day is, sell more, make more. But how do you do that? And that's where it's something that takes a long time to really figure out and get an understanding of like, okay, who are your customers and how are they going to react to a certain type of email or a certain type of text or a certain type of social post or certain ways that your website is formatted or what's written in a blog. There's, I even want to go back to what I was talking about before, just like with the example of like, the employee that's probably got too much that's saddled on them. And maybe they're just a couple years out of school and don't have the seasoning that goes into like managing all these different processes. But, there's always an opportunity if you're willing to experiment with different channels and try different things and, find what works. And then when something works, keep going with it. But yeah, I mean, you definitely want to think about like, just to get tactical for a second, like if I'm thinking about email and SMS, like you want to really get very specific of, send cadence and, how often are you sending emails to users? How are those individual groups of users resonating? Like, how is your segmentation set up so that, the users that are most interested, that, they're going to open every single email, like that you make sure that you send that to them, and they're going to click on every single email, that they're getting everything, but not, that's only a small percentage of the users that are ultimately going to, be in the list. And what are the things that are worthy of sending to everyone? Are you making a big announcement? Are you doing a collaboration with an influencer? Are you doing X, Y, and Z? When I'm thinking about the approach that we take with a lot of clients that we work with, like for email, for example, there's always going to be some sales angle for the most part, but what kind of goes along with that? What's the story that you're telling that has to do with that product? How is, if it's a workout supplement, how is this product going to make them feel? How is it going to benefit them, as opposed to like, oh, here's what's in the product, or here's what the product is, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, it's this thing. I know I'm being kind of, I feel like I'm being kind of vague, right? Like,
No, I think what you're saying makes a lot of sense. It's the a lot of what I think is the goal is obviously to make them feel something, to make them feel like this is the right thing for them. I think like it's a really great thing that content can do is like to kind of break down some of those barriers of like people know when they're being sold to, but like when there's actual value that kind of comes from the content. I know it's a really ambiguous thing in a lot of ways to kind of describe for like every brand, but I think what you're saying makes a lot of sense. And I guess like I'd love to understand too. It's like, should we be thinking about content? Is it more important like pre-purchase? Is it more important post-purchase with customers? Like, is it totally different? Can you like talk me through like some of how you even think about that? Like, because I know automations are a huge piece of this as well with email and SMS and delivering that content and having it at the right cadence. But how do you kind of differentiate like pre-purchase content versus like post-purchase content?
that's a really good question. And actually something that I get feedback on a lot from merchants that I work with. Like, let's say it's, someone that's selling something that's a relatively high value product, something that, you know, high enough that they have typically like extremely low conversion rates because they're driving a lot of traffic to their site. But, hey, here's this $1,500 thing. Like, no one's just going to like buy that from a Facebook ad. Um, a lot of those types of brands I've seen in the past have been like super hesitant to put emphasis on an email marketing program or a text
Mm-hmm.
marketing program because they think like, okay, I've gotten the sale, and the likelihood that they're going to buy anything else from us is pretty low. If their repeat purchase rate is like 3% or 5%, um, then what do I need email for? What do I need to be like sending email blasts? But we try to flip the conversation to say, well, if you're spending all this money on ads, let's say, and you're renting users' attention spans, in their news feeds, and then you're getting them to your site, and then they haven't bought yet because it's a fairly sizable investment that you're asking them to make, regardless of what the product is. Um, then what are you going to do to get them back to the site again? And what are you going to do to like educate them more? Like, the only thing that you're going to then do in that scenario is you're going to have to keep spending the money on the advertising. That individual user is going to need to see another ad, and they're going to need to click
Mm-hmm.
through on another ad, and then they're going to have to go through the same process. So that's where like email and SMS, even for a brand like that, becomes really, really important because it is all about the pre-sale. Like in that example, like it's what information can you give that's going to educate them about what it is that you're selling, or the lifestyle that goes along with that product. And then can you get that user to, over the hump to make that purchase.
Sure.
And so it's like really, really important. Now that's not to say that it's not important for a brand that, like, let's say it's a much lower cost type of product, a $30 or $40 cost. It's a replenishable product. It's something that, in theory, like someone should be coming back and buying again and again and again if they like it. Then I'd say it's kind of both. It's, well, you want to educate people enough to make the purchase. You want to serve the relevant content in the welcome flow. You want to drive all those points home. But then, okay, now they bought, and what's their review experience, and what's their delivery experience, and their shipping experience, and what's everything that's happening post purchase, and when should they in theory be buying again? So
Mm-hmm.
what other information are you giving? And again, not just sales focused stuff, but I don't mean to. I'm going to bring them up again only because I think it's such a good example, but not because I'm trying to like, give them too much pub. But ProMix is a really good example because they're selling workout supplements. They are, it's obviously a replenishable product. It's a consumable product. So it's something that, if you like the pre-workout, or if you like the protein, or if you like the collagen, or any other products that they offer, there's plenty. Then it's something that once you run out, then yeah, you if that's part of your lifestyle, then you should want to buy again. But like, what are the things that are going to help educate you about what you've already bought, or the products that you don't have yet, but what could in theory be put in front of you based on the products that you've purchased before? So what's your affinity for other products? those are all things that we think about when going through the process of, um, you know, sending email campaigns and also setting up automated flows to users over time. But the approach can really be applied to, again, any type of business. Um, if it's a jewelry company and you just sold this pair of earrings, this it's just sterling silver earrings with like a little red like jewel in it. It's not like, it's not fine jewelry, it's not diamonds, but hey, you have a matching necklace that goes along with that, or matching bracelet. And okay, like what are you putting in front of users that in theory might want to make them um, buy that complementary product?
Sure.
Um, so
And
yeah,
with
I mean, it depends on every business at the end of the day.
Yeah, no, so it's the golden rule of e-commerce. It depends in a lot of ways,
Yeah.
but I think no, this is all really insightful. I think to think about is that obviously there's a lot of things that we can consider in our content. Sort of creates just conversations with customer, introduces things. I think post purchase is a really interesting place for content. I think it's sort of like we get really caught up as marketers and well, shoot, we got to do a review request. We got to have, updates on where their shipping is at. We got to have, a replenish reminder, but like the content can be such a valuable way to just lead with, value, I think. So I'm curious, like when you think about engaging with content post purchase, are there particular places or timing of like that you like to put content in? Is it like to like once they purchase, like some of that content to alleviate buyer's remorse? Is it like to educate them on, if it's a replenishable, maybe to get them in the behavior of like, hey, you should reorder this at some point? Like any just like kind of broader thoughts maybe on like the purposes that you're trying to maybe accomplish with content post purchase?
Yeah, 100%. I'll go back to the example of like if it's a product that is super higher value for, for most consumers, and you're putting a really heavy emphasis on that pre-purchase process in order to get them over the hump. Well, okay, now they've bought, and now they bought this, $2,000 thing, whatever that thing. I don't even want to give an example because it can be anything. Now, are there things that someone needs to learn about that product in order, how to use it, or what their unboxing experience should be like? What should their expectations be? That like, okay, yay, let's celebrate that you bought this thing, and now what happens? That's a really good opportunity too. Even if it's not a situation where somebody might be buying again from you in 30 days, but you still want to maintain that connection in some way, on a brand level, because then yeah, maybe you release something else down the line that you want to that you do want to upsell to users that have bought from you before, or you want to drive referrals because you know what, someone's going to only buy from you once ever, and yet you absolutely love this product, and you can, if you can build a mechanism for users to get people that they know to buy from you, then that's a good thing. But yeah, it always depends. It always depends. It really does depend on what the products are. Like
Sure.
what is it that I'll use an example, and I have no association with them whatsoever. They are not a client. I'm not an investor. Nothing. Absolute, like nothing. But cold plunge, for example, if you know the brand, like they
Mhm.
sell, what is it, like a $4,000 bathtub, basically.
Sure.
And I don't mean to sound like I'm minimizing it. Like I like the product. I don't own one, but I like the approach. I haven't, gone as far as like gone through a buying experience with them. I don't know what they're serving. Um, my approach would be, if I were selling this $3,000 or $4,000 thing that is, very good for your body to, be in, 40 degree, 40 degree cold plunge for 5 minutes a day in the morning, and, all the features about the product of how it, cycles through the water supply, and you never have to get like ice, and it's all the benefits for having a product like that. Okay, now you've bought the $3,000 or $4,000 thing, and now that I bought it, what do I do? Like, how is it being delivered? When it gets delivered, what do I need to be equipped with within my home in order to hook it up properly? What all the common questions for a higher value product, you should try to answer it in the post-purchase process, because for something like that, you're going to get a lot of them. And from a customer service perspective, you want to be there for customers, but you also you don't want your team to be taxed either. But again, it always depends. Like even for like any type of product, like maybe you're selling coffee, and the D2C coffee that you're selling, someone has bought, and so what flavor did they buy?
Mhm.
And so did they buy pumpkin spice? And I'm just thinking that because now it's October and it's almost Halloween and all that. But did they buy pumpkin spice? And if they bought pumpkin spice, like maybe they just love the fall and this time of year, and you're going to serve them a particular type of post-purchase email, even just as a thank you, with no other call to action, no content other than a pumpkin spice themed email. The same thing, maybe you have a peppermint coffee, and that's a little more holiday-ish, kind of winter, and maybe there's something to be done there. So like there's always an angle, I guess
Right.
is the point. Like there's always something that you can do, and really, without getting too overwhelmed with it, like it's really a question of what do you prioritize. As the brand, like, yeah, you probably are going to end up prioritizing the things that in theory are going to make you money, like first of all. But if you're a brand that has, let's say, the resources where there is a customer service team, or even if at least if it's one or two people that are dedicated to that, or if it's one or two people that are dedicated to social, or one or two people that are dedicated to email, it does give you a little bit more flexibility in order to, put different content series in place and like really help boost, customer sentiment and just people's overall feelings about a brand, which, on a long tail, you can kind of get an understanding of how that has an overall impact on revenue at the end of the day. But yeah, I mean, for so many brands that are out there, like, because I did it, right? I did it with the sunglasses company that I had. You're doing everything. So there's only so many things that you can do. So you just got to really prioritize, like, what are the things that, you've seen and experimented with and seen to have some level of impact, and then you kind of keep going in that direction because it's is seemingly like having a positive influence on performance of the business, and you keep going from there.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's a really, just great differentiator to you mentioning like the cold plunge example, the coffee brands as well. Like, it's also being there for the customer, being 1,000 steps ahead of them, anticipating needs post purchase, and like using content to deliver that. Whether that's using just conventional post purchase emails, like an order tracking page, transactional, whatever you're using to deliver those things. Not to plug Wonderman again, but I think it's like we see a lot of great value from putting content here, and it elicits the click. It gets a customer back to site, which we know can also do a lot of great things as well. But it's also just investing in like what makes the brand unique. And I think like to go back to like the start of our conversation, like we talked about like SMS, email, social becoming like these echo chambers.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a great way to get out of that trap, is to just invest in content and have a strategy. And before we kind of like wrap up this discussion, like I wanted to play a little bit of like hypothetical,
Yeah.
kind of like if we were to put like Ben's, like founder hat on, and you were to start, let's pick let's do a CPG brand. Let's say we sell sparkling water, highly commoditized space.
Yeah.
If you had to give a quick rapid fire, just what you would think about like content strategy, what would you prioritize or think about? And it could just be a few things. It doesn't have to be all exhaustive, but what would you think about with that?
Well, if you're selling something like water, it's all content, right? I mean, look at what Liquid Death has done, for example. They've created this incredible brand selling canned water, and they're doing a really, really good job of it. It's all about what is the lifestyle of the Liquid Death consumer that makes drinking Liquid Death, which again is water, different than I'm drinking right now as we're doing this, Kirkland, Costco water. Like it just, it's all about the content. It's all about the lifestyle that you're portraying. It's all about everything that has almost nothing to do with the product in a way, if that makes sense. Now, granted, look, there's some differences in different waters and minerals that are contained within, and there is some of that. There is some differentiation, but at the end of the day, still water.
Sure.
And so, yeah, I mean that's when a brand needs to be all in on brand, all in on what is it that what are you selling? What's this aspirational thing that you're putting out there? Because otherwise,
And
it's just water.
when you think about that too, is it like creating a bunch of like content that you would link out to? Is it putting that content in the emails and the SMSs about what makes like that lifestyle unique? Is it a bit of both? Like how would you actually deliver content like that then?
Yeah, I think it's both. I mean, we like to do a lot like it's not really like any revolutionary idea, but not to have like social operate in a silo because like
Mhm.
a lot of times that can happen. And it's easy for that to happen, but you might have whether it's 10,000 or 50,000 or 5,000 or 200,000 people that are in an email list or tens of thousands in an SMS list. Um, but maybe you only have 20,000 followers on Instagram. I'm just throwing numbers out there, but clearly there are plenty of people that are in your sphere. They're in your world. They have a general awareness of the brand, whether they've purchased before, they haven't purchased before.
Sure.
Um, but cross pollinate those things. Like you've put out this great video on social, then put a preview in an email. Like make it like take a couple screen grabs, make a GIF, put it in an email, put it in an SMS. Like don't sell anything. Just be like, oh my God, this thing that we made is hilarious. Like it doesn't have to be as like informal as that, but um, just you use your own marketing lists as sort of a mechanism to amplify your social content. We love doing that. I don't see a lot of brands doing that enough. They'll go as far as like, in your welcome flow, hey, follow us on Instagram. And that's like the only emphasis that's ever really put on it, other than maybe like they have a footer, some element in their footer that's just like, linking out to Instagram. Oh, use hashtag XYZ, but like, really making it a focus of the content that's being put out there, I think can kind of be a little bit of a game changer, especially with like how, algorithms work.
Mhm.
If you put a post out on Instagram, just for example, and then you just emailed that to 40,000 people and, okay, of the 40,000 people you sent it to, 30% open and, maybe, 5%, click, but okay, those 5% are making it to your post, and a percentage of those are going to engage with it. They're going to comment, they're going to like something, and if it's actually good content, that's going to help amplify the reach of that. And then, oh, what's this brand? And it's this cycle that keeps going.
Sure.
Um,
It's all momentum and I think a lot of ways,
yeah.
but it's like the omni-channel cross-pollination. It's kind of delivering the lifestyle, a little bit further and getting them engaged. And it's an ecosystem in a
Yeah.
lot of ways, I think, with social. And so if lifestyle and aspirations are like big in like a CPG or like, just a commoditized space, let's call it that.
Mhm.
What about something like a, beauty and cosmetics brand? Would there be any
Mhm.
differences there where like, products are used more frequently? How would you approach content in a space like that?
It's a little bit different for sure. Because in a space like that, I mean, I guess the same could be true for any business now, but the barrier to entry or the costs, the acquisition costs tend to be fairly high, at least from what I've seen. And I guess in theory, it's if someone is using a particular like if it's makeup, if it's a facial cleanser, if it's mascara, like whatever it might be. Um, Most folks that may use a product like that, they have a product like that they use. Now they may get to the point like, yeah, I'm looking for something else, and that's a good starting point for a brand to work off of. But in general, they've got experience with something. So how do you get them to get to the point of wanting to try something else, especially if they weren't looking to do so? that's where you're selling the benefits, you're selling the things that it can do, you're showcasing reviews, whether that's written with also images, or if you're getting video reviews. Like, there's I think there is a lot more like kind of upfront selling, even for a product like that. To like go back to what we were talking about earlier, like, all right, if it's a high value product, a lot of like the pre-sale, but even for something like this, even if you're selling something for 20, 30, $40, whatever it is, there's a lot going into that pre-sale.
Sure.
There's a lot going into like the helping someone understand, like, why is your product better than another? Is it the, no, is it no pollutants? Is it cruelty free? Like, does it work? There's so many different things to think about and interesting challenges to think about there. I'll give another shout out only because like I see it as like a really good example. Are you familiar with Gatsby? The tool
I am.
Gatsby?
Yeah.
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 Okay. So for everybody listening that doesn't know what Gatsby is a really dynamic, I like to think of it as like a social listening tool and a data connector that can take things that are happening on your Instagram and users that are tagging on you on your Instagram, on your TikTok, and other channels, and can bring that into a tool like Klaviyo.
Mm-hmm.
And what's really powerful about that is, you can create essentially create like your own influencer program. So as opposed to using like, it can be done in tandem with it, but really as opposed to using like a service that has a network of 100,000 different creators, like this is more for amplifying the reach of your brand through your customers' posts, which is very cool. So for example, you've bought from, beauty brand XYZ before. You go back to their website. Okay, you bought before, your profile is cookied, your information is in there. They know you're in the Klaviyo list. They know you bought. So serve a pop-up that says, hey, if you join our ambassador program, you can get $20 off your next purchase. And then all you have to do is you enter your email, you enter your Instagram handle. Now, once you've done that, because of how Gatsby works, that can connect you as the consumer. That'll connect your Instagram profile with their Klaviyo, and they can see, okay, how many followers do you have? What's your typical like level of engagement? How, we'll call it like valid are you as a potential lead for the program? And for whatever conditions that the brand may want to set, you can say, okay, for everybody over 2,000 followers, just for example, serve them an email that says, hey, you were accepted, you're in our ambassador program, post a video using our product, and make sure to tag us. And when you do, you'll get $20 off. You make the post, you make the tag. Once you've made that tag, that triggers a flow in Klaviyo that says, hey, here's your $20. And here's this single use discount code that can't be spread anywhere else, but that's specific to you. It's valid for 14 days. Here, go make your next purchase. Gatsby's great for creating that. I haven't seen another tool that can do something like that. I'm sure it might be out there, but we've been working with them actually for a number of different clients on doing things exactly like that.
That's awesome.
And that's like just this untapped thing, right? Like everybody wants to talk about influencer marketing, but what is that really? Like, 8 years ago when I started the sunglasses business, I built that company entirely off of influencer marketing. Now, influencer marketing wasn't like the popular phrase yet, but what did I do? I reached out to people on Instagram. I said, hey, you're building this Instagram following, and like, Instagram was not in its infancy, but it was
Different
kind of where
times,
TikTok
for
is
sure.
now, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, I'll send you some sunglasses. You take a couple photos, put a post up, great, and that's it, and all good. I think the most I ever paid someone, I only paid someone once, was $60.
Mm-hmm.
And it did great. The post did great, but all the people that posted that at the time had a couple 100,000 followers, that now some of them have 3 million, 4 million, 5 million, 10 million followers, who all did it for free. All those posts did great too. But that doesn't that approach doesn't really work anymore.
Sure. Yeah, I mean the creator economy has changed a lot,
Yes.
and I think now it's like this whole micro influencer versus larger influencer debate that seems to be
Mhm.
going on. But I mean, at the end of the day, like influencers, creators, whatever we're calling them now, are such great content machines for us to tap into if we can figure out. And I seems like tools like Gatsby have really helped you to make that happen, but also connecting it to Klaviyo takes it another step closer, I think, to really bridging the gap in a lot of ways, and also just not
Yeah.
having to, cutting out the service. I think of, having that middleman, which I know is a
Yeah,
lot of
automating the
how
process is one piece. Two is having real customers participate in that, as
exactly.
opposed to like a what someone would think of as like an influencer program can absolutely work. I mean, I've seen it work, but it could also not work. If just
Sure.
that person who's created that content is like it's just not really resonating, or the way algorithms have changed, like it's not having much of an impact. But for someone who's just, even if it's somebody they've got a couple hundred followers and those followers are just their friends and they use the XYZ product, and you're rewarding that person for, showcasing something for a referral in a little bit of a different way, rather than just say, give $10, get $10. Okay, send this email with this link, to your friend. And if they click through and buy, then great. It's just a little bit of a different approach. And it can be really, really effective.
Totally. I think this is an example that I kind of thought of. So my wife has an Instagram handle for our Australian Shepherds, and
Nice.
it's like it became like a little bit of like a micro influencer page. Got a couple thousand followers, and I think Pupbox ended up sponsoring them. But like we drove a lot of sales for Pupbox because we just had this engaged Australian Shepherd community,
Yep.
and I think it goes against the grain of conventional kind of knowledge, which has been like you have to work with these larger to 5-10 million follower type accounts. But really, the authentic content can come, from some of those micro accounts as well. But that spills into email, into SMS, and all that content. It kind of creates this ecosystem, I think, within that too. So a lot of benefit for Pupbox for sending probably just
Yeah.
a little bit of
Yeah, no, 100%. That's a really great example.
totally. Well, yeah, I would love to keep talking about all this content stuff. I think we're at a good stopping point here, but I think it'd be great to bring you back on and talk more about influencer strategies. I know, but that is something that a lot of folks are thinking about, as we kind of step into 2023 and we're thinking about planning for that. But before I let you go, Ben, I wanted to ask you a question unrelated to this, but sort of related. Any retention tools besides Gatsby that you can't live without right now? Like what's in Ben's like top tech stack right now? If you had to give me like 3 or 4.
Yeah, no, 100%. Gatsby's definitely one of them. The shameless plug for Wonderment, to be honest, has been really great over the course of the last 6 months since I've sort of fully dove in to what you guys are doing. I really love at its core, right? The simple thing of you send a shipping confirmation and sending someone to your website, regardless of like, if all that's on that page, and you can certainly do more with Wonderment and adding, dynamic information and content to that landing page, but just not sending someone to USPS.com, not sending someone to UPS, not just sending the tracking number with no link to anywhere, and then your email tool is picking it up as a tracking number because you're using Gmail and you're clicking through, it's going to a Google search. Like just being able to link users directly to the site and give them an update on shipping is enough for me as a sell to say to brands like, you should do this. And it's been really great for everybody that we brought onto the platform. And that crossover, and this is going down another rabbit hole, but this is a big reason why like Klaviyo has kind of shifted the focus to kind of refer to themselves as a platform, as a a customer data platform, and a place to be a central hub for different information for your business. That integration with Klaviyo so that you can trigger the relevant messaging is really, really important. There's some others. I mean, for reviews, I'm a big fan of Junip. I really like what the guys are over there are doing. I love, again, the integration with Klaviyo and being able to serve prompts for users to leave that review from Klaviyo. And then once that review is left, serve additional information that can trigger a flow or trigger dynamic content within a message, like on the Klaviyo side. I mean, there's probably more I should shout out, but there's so many like really good apps and services that are out there that can help to enhance the customer experience. The types of things I'd say that I try to stray away from um, are the like gimmicky apps and services that are out there. I won't necessarily like put any out by name, but I'm sure everyone has experienced this when they go to a website and it's like, hey, so and so purchased this 5 minutes ago in St. Louis,
Mhm.
Missouri. It's like, no, they didn't. It's all like
Yeah,
it's either BS information or it's real information, but like I I don't it doesn't really resonate. It doesn't really play a factor in whether or not I'm gonna buy.
totally.
Um, and so like things like that we definitely try to avoid. But for the tools that have some sort of utility for customers that we work with, like they typically will sit high on a recommendation list. Another, actually, I should give another shout out. And trust me, for everybody listening, I have not I have not been paid to like give any of these plugs, but I am, to be straightforward, I am in a lot of partner programs for sure. But Elevar has been really, really great for a lot of merchants that we work with. There's a lot of different ways to leverage Elevar, to use Elevar, to benefit your brand. Like for the folks that are on, I'd say a little bit more of an advanced level. I mean, for it to be a more intensive tagging system and something that you leverage as you're running split tests and content changes on site, like that's one bucket. But um, the bucket where a lot of merchants that we work with that will ultimately like use the tool is for data clarity around their advertising,
Mhm.
which nobody has obviously right now post iOS 14.5. And a lot of times when I'm talking to clients about potentially using Elevar, it's a question of okay, what information will I see, what data and reports, and it's not that. It's a data connector. It's not a business intelligence tool. It's not a reporting engine, but it's something that's going to take the information from Facebook ads and Google ads and Klaviyo and Shopify and Google Analytics and be able to spit information back into into Facebook Business Manager, into Google Ads, so that it can do two things. One, it'll improve in-platform metrics, which is fine. It's sort of neither here nor there. It's not like the most important thing. But two, the thing that is important is giving more information to the Facebook algorithm, for example, to say, okay, these are the things that are working. These are the things that are converting. It's helping to bridge that gap between the data loss from iOS 14.5 and what we used to have, of understanding, like, regardless of attribution model, what users are actually converting. And if we have a better idea of what users are actually converting, then Facebook can kind of do what it needs to do in doing a better job at finding other users that might ultimately convert, that might ultimately buy something, might sign up for something, or might do XYZ. And Elevar has been a really impactful tool for that.
Awesome. I think,
So yeah.
yeah, I've heard a lot of great things about, folks, what they're doing with Elevar. Great, great shout out. I think also great shout out with Junip Stewart. I just talked with him the other day. Love what Junip is building. And I think that, all these things kind of customer experience focused, but also giving more visibility and insight to so valuable. But Ben, this has been awesome. And I really appreciate you giving the time and just sharing your knowledge. I've learned a lot on content and also, what you're thinking about with your tech stack now too. But before I let you go too, I wanted to ask, where can folks get in touch with you if they want to learn more about what you're doing, maybe partner with you? Where should they go to get in touch with you?
Yeah, 100%. Super simple. It's just benzettler.com, BenZettler. I'm fairly active on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. All my social handles are just at Ben Zettler. Folks can catch me there, and I'm always happy to have conversations, whether it's somebody looking for a new partnership or if somebody's just got a question about something to do with their e-commerce store, or if somebody's interested in working with us. Happy to have those conversations as well.
Awesome. And then we'll link out to that in the show notes. Anyone listening who wants to get in touch with Ben. But dude, really, really appreciate the honest conversation and dropping so much knowledge. We'll have to have you on the show again soon to talk more about influencers, content, and all that good stuff.
Amazing. Thank you so much for having me.